Thanks for watching the Daily Debate for tonight, live Thursdays. I'm Tahrid Hussein and I have the pleasure of your company for the coming hour. We'll be talking about stories that make headlines, and among the major stories that make headlines, the inauguration of the new Suez Canal development project by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and its impact on the Egyptian economy. How about international cooperation? What sort of horizons does this project open for Egypt, especially also on the economic side? That is going to be part of our discussion. We'll be also recapping the important visit by President al-Sisi to Russia and the results and the fruits of this important visit on the Daily Debate for tonight. Further horizons of cooperation between Egypt and Russia. First, the top stories. The Ministry of Interior said on Thursday that the security plan it had set to confront possible chaos by the terrorist Brotherhood organization has given fruit. The ministry had said in a statement that 114 Brotherhood members were arrested in 8 governorates in possession of Molotov cocktails and also weapons. It added that 23 explosive packages were defused in several areas that had witnessed the protests by elements of the terrorist organizations. The statement also said that 1 policeman was killed during the confrontations and that another policeman was injured by a bird shot. A new 5-day truce between Hamas and Israel appeared to be holding Thursday despite the shaky start after both sides had agreed to give the Egyptian brokered peace negotiations in Cairo more time in order to end the Gaza war. The Israeli military had said that Gaza activists breached the truce. However, Hamas officials denied that the Palestinians had breached the truce and denounced Israel's airstrikes as a violation of the calm. A halt in more than 1 month of fighting in which 1,945 Palestinians and 67 Israelis have been killed had been set to expire at midnight on Wednesday. And to Iraq, where the governor of the Iraq Sunni heartland province of Al-Abur had said that he has secured the promise of the U.S. support in a battle against the Islamic State, reviving Hansen alliance that had thwarted an earlier militant threat from Al-Qaeda. Ahmad al-Dulimi said that his request made in meetings with the U.S. diplomats and a senior military officer had included air support against militants who had a tight grip on large parts of Iraq. And to Syria, where the government forces have taken or retaken most of a key Damascus suburb that they have been fighting for months to recapture from the rebel forces. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights had said on Thursday that the army had control over most of Mehna, though there are still some clashes. Military sources said that the army was continuing the operations in Mehna and realizing qualitative successes. The troops had killed a large number of terrorists that are pursuing others in the field of the north of the area. Mehna is considered to be lying southeast of the capital. It has a key flashpoint in fighting around Damascus. So those were the major stories that make headlines on Thursday. We'll be talking today on more than one important aspect, the economic side of this important project, the new Suez Canal development project. What sort of opportunities does it provide for the youth? How far will it help in the problems or on the challenges of unemployment? How about working on the national interest sphere and more? And also the fruit and a recap of President al-Sisi's visit to Russia. Stay with us and let's see the first report highlighting our episode tonight of the Daily Debate. In 2 public appearances last week, President Fattah al-Sisi unveiled major development schemes. On Tuesday, Ismailiyah al-Sisi outlined an ambitious plan to develop the Suez Canal. Addressing a mixed audience of military personnel and civilians, al-Sisi announced that a new waterway is to be dug parallel to the existing canal. The work will be carried out by a consortium of 37 Egyptian companies with the army in overall charge. The announcement by Egypt that it will build a new waterway parallel to the Suez Canal is aimed not just to keep pace with growing international trends, but also to boost revenue in a country that has been forced to become the world's largest wheat importer to feed its 84 million people. Revenue from the new project is expected to reach $13.5 billion by 2023 versus the current $5 billion from its 145-year-old
predecessor. LCC said the construction of the $4 billion US 72 kilometers waterway linking the Mediterranean and Red Seas will create about 1 million jobs in a country where a quarter of the population lives below the poverty line. Even Suez Development Authority head Mohammed said the project was expected to be completed over 5 years. It includes tunnels for motor vehicles and trains. The current canal is the fastest shipping lane between Asia and Europe. The new channel, which will allow vessels to pass each on the canal, will cut ships' waiting time to a maximum of 3 hours from the current 11 hours, as it will have a capacity for 96 ships a day versus the current 49. International trade is facing new challenges, and one of them is linked to attempts to curb logistics and transport costs, which have an impact on the final costs of goods, as well as on the setting of the taxable bases on which import duties are levied afterwards. Government estimates put the cost of work on the new canal at £60 billion, according to sources, though Mohammed, chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, is on record as saying it could cost half that amount. Sisi said that the financing will be generated by a public share issue. Double routing the waterway is just one part of a more ambitious scheme to develop the Suez Canal. Road networks accessing the canal will be expanded and an air terminal built. The aim is to complete all additional infrastructure projects within 3 years at a projected cost of £150 billion. The financing is expected to come from the private sector. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are expected to be major partners. Its report on the new project, the World Bank wrote the Suez Canal Development Project for Egypt will assist in financing a canal improvement program. The Suez Canal is one of the most important international waterways in the world. In order for the canal to continue being a safe passageway, it must be improved and maintained gradually.
The Suez Canal Mega Development Project, a very important and ambitious project for Egypt, for the Egyptian youth. How are you going to engage the youth in such an important project that is reflected positively on our national interests? And always a pleasure to have with us Dr. Mehna, who is the Professor of Political Economy. Dr. Ahmed, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Well, talking about the Suez Canal Mega Development Project, actually many opportunities that it does offer to the sea.
Yep.
If we talk about to the local level and also regional, what would you say?
On the local level, basically, it will provide a vital solution to a number of problems that Egypt has been facing in the last few years in terms of decreasing the unemployment rate, which reached 13.6. It will help in generating foreign revenue that will basically help Egypt in the balance of trade and the balance of payment. Will help also in terms of establishing industrial areas, in terms of increasing the production, which basically, as a result, will increase the export and help Egypt regain its economic position. In terms of the locals as well, will start feeling, after gaining the employment, we will start feeling a change in the lifestyle as well.
Psychologically, because we always need a project where we do belong.
Exactly. It's a social impact that the mega project will have in terms of the Egyptians regaining the confidence in themselves that they can lead the world again. And on the security side, helping Sinai to develop a lot better and attract hoping millions of the people living in the Delta, and basically provide a shield that can help us develop that particular area. On the regional side, I think will help Egypt regain its position in terms of international relations and international aid, and its position in the political conflict that is taking place in the moment. And because when we look at the Suez Canal, it's basically the center of a number of corridors and that's right. We're talking about the Gibraltar, we're talking about Aden, we're talking about the Black Sea. So I think it will provide a great opportunity, and particularly in terms of the competition of Panama Canal, because Panama Canal has basically been expanded in the last 10 years, trying to attract customers from the Suez Canal strategy. So definitely it is the beginning of a new Egypt in the 21st century.
Right, a new beginning, and this is what we really need to approach. We are always looking for a new beginning for the country, for a project where we can all feel that we do belong. Why, in your opinion, Dr. Mehena, were the previous government not managing to approach such a project? Was it due to certain challenges that were on the way?
I think that the challenges that we're facing at the moment, particularly after the two revolutions, I think there are more challenges and more problems facing than before. If you look at the foreign reserve, for example, Egypt had 36 billions compared to 12 billions now if you really take out the aid. I think it's to do with the decision making. It needed a strong leader, and I think Marshal Sisi, the President Sisi, has really provided that leader that can make a decision and take Egypt to the next phase. And also people, in terms of losing the confidence in themselves that they can really make the projects. If you look at the high dam, for example, if digging the Suez Canal, for instance, we never had the finance, and we never really had the manpower, and we never had the confidence in ourselves. But I think this is really the vision of a strong leader that can basically lead the nation into a challenge and it can be achieved. And I think reducing the time from 3 years to 1 year, I think it reflects the confidence of President Sisi in the nation and its people that can basically do it in a year.
Right, hopefully we can do it, and we have with us Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, who is the head of the Arab Investors Union. Ambassador Bayoumi, thank you very much for joining us here live on Now TV and talking about opportunities that this important mega development project, the new Suez Canal mega project, provides also on the economic level, regionally, and on the Arab level as well. What would you say, Mr. Ambassador?
This is a huge positive case of the input, and it has different phases and phases. The first is to build another canal parallel to the Indian for 76 kilometers. This is a huge part, and it will increase the circulation and the income of the Suez Canal by 269%. I want to also stress that this is the most important canal in the world. The second phase is to establish a sort of industrial area where we can call for industry from anywhere in the world, especially to serve our Egyptian citizens living abroad, the Arabs. Then we need also the technology coming from Japan, Europe, or the United States. I think that this is an endless fight which can create all the time new and new problems. This is also immediately we should talk about another point. But as you said, we need mega projects in order to absorb lot of unemployment in our country. But at the same time, we need immediately to finance small and medium-sized projects. We need also the very small projects where our social fund for development is financing. We need to increase this finance in order to give the opportunity for any young gentleman or lady who wants to establish his self project that we help him in finance.
Right. Excellency, what sort of opportunities does it provide for investors? And meantime, since we are talking about opportunities, we should also talk about incentives.
Yes. Now, with confidence, we are presenting Egypt as a chance for investors, not a country which is facing problems. And here I'm quoting Miguel Martinez, the former minister for affairs, saying I was written in a European forum in Cyprus a few months ago. I will say that South Mediterranean, especially Egypt, is a chance for any investor. I am not worried at all for attracting investors in Egypt. And I want to tell you some good news there, that the Arab investors became our second largest investors after the Europeans. The American ones, they sold but on the other side, I do not need neither new loans or new attraction, because Egypt by itself is enough. But I want to clear the environment of the mass media, where some columnists are saying that the businessmen are using us, are taking much more profit than they should have. This sort of information is poisons the environment. Also, there are some problems where we have to solve with old investors, because if we want to attract new investors, we have to satisfy the old ones, especially those who are complaining about some bureaucratic problems or some financial problems.
Right, Excellency Ambassador Qunat, head of the Arab Investors Union, thank you so much for joining us here live on Mars TV and sharing with us your opinion concerning this project, Professor Mehna, the impacts of the project on the local sphere here in Egypt, engaging the youth in the project. As you've mentioned, it is going to help contribute in solving the problems of unemployment. How are we going to engage the youth in building the project in itself?
I think Egypt in the past few decades has depended on developing the economy in a traditional way. In other words, if we have crops that we export as is, the trend that Egypt is taking at this point is the value added in terms of establishing factories, developing and boosting the small businesses, which amount for 80% of employment in Egypt. So I think helping and offering investment opportunities for youth in terms of small businesses, workshops and suppliers to the large corporations that will basically be based on the Suez corridor will help the youth engage in a lot of projects. And I think the issue here that in terms of the labor, as a cheaper labor than Europe, the investors will feel that the cost of production has been a lot less than their production in Europe or in America. Which basically helps the Egyptians to build small companies that can basically supply with the transportation or small goods or small components to these issues. In terms of the investment, I think the Suez Canal with the ports around it will basically help reduce the transportation cost as well, serving the three continents through, going into the Mediterranean, into Europe or east via the roads to Asia or via the mainland in Egypt into Africa. So definitely there is a major opportunity here, and the Egyptians, I think as soon as we experience the benefit of the Suez Canal, a lot of them will move to Sinai and they will develop more and more projects.
Right. What sort of incentives should we work on, especially in front of investors who are now studying the project and would want to contribute? What sort of those incentives that we then provide?
In terms of incentives, what we need basically to help investors really establish a foreign direct investment into Egypt, it's three factors or three things. Number one is the labor, two is the land and money. We bring the money, we've got the land, and we need to provide them with qualified labor. I think security as well is a major issue, and the corridor and development around it to the east and west will help them basically have that sort of security to their projects. We need to develop a number of infrastructure, and I think the mega development plan for the Suez corridor includes 6 roads, Cairo, Ismailia, Suez, and Port Said, which basically will link the eastern delta to the Suez corridor. We're talking about 5 tunnels aside from Ahmed Hamdi. So basically we'll link again the western part to the central Sinai, which has been neglected for a very long time. The President Sisi has also talked about the new capital towards the east. So here there will be a lot of infrastructure. They will be close to the development area. So investors, all they need is security, they need infrastructure, and basically they will be safe and able to develop their manufacturing. So we need to help them in that particular area. On the other side, we need to help them in terms of legislation. But in terms of foreign direct investment, really the major issue that faces international investors is the admin procedures in terms of registration. And the Minister of Trade, that's right. So the Minister of Investment,
exactly.
So he talked about the one-shop procedures. So foreign investors will be able to deal with one entity, finish all the licenses, the procedures in a very short time, and basically start working.
Right. Can you look to this project, Dr. Mehna, as a project that is going to change the face of the economic map of the country? And how about the region? How far will the region also benefit from such a project being on Egyptian soil?
In terms of the economic benefits of changing the economic map of Egypt, Egypt really faces, if you allow me, talking about the budget itself, we're talking about 26% the bill of salaries. $209 billion. We're talking about 25% serving the debts. We're talking about 25% subsidy and the 25% that is left over for the country. So I think with increasing the revenue, that will help either help keep the subsidies or help Egypt have more foreign reserve in terms of import and export, and taking into account that we already at this point import more than 60% of our food from abroad. So having foreign currency in terms of the increasing the number of ships passing, we're talking about 97 ships instead of 49 at this point, talking about the revenue that will increase 259% a year, and now amounting to about just passing $13 billion, aside from the logistics and the businesses around the east and west. So I think we will see a major change. On the regional side, I think the major impact that will have is the strategic positioning of Egypt and the political impact that will have on the region, and as well as the east and west. And you could see that from the interest of Russia trying to get into the region again and insisting on investing in the Suez corridor, because definitely will have an impact and it will change the map of politics, not just in the Middle East but worldwide.
But also the finances, because such projects need huge finances. How about the contribution?
I think President Sisi is talking at the moment about a number of certificates and documents will be issued to Egyptians at £100, trying also to build that sense of reality from Egyptians. Definitely. Yesterday, a number of banks announced that they are able to provide up to $12 billion in aid over a period of time to help build the project. But particularly, I'm going to talk about the informal sector. Egypt, in terms of the formal sector, we do have problems in terms of the registered businesses, the registered labor, and the amount of money in the banks. But the informal sector is huge in Egypt. That some statistics talk about an economy that amounts to 1 trillion Egyptian pounds per year. So in terms of money, there is no money. But again, going back to developing not just the area but the Egyptian economy as a whole, we're talking about three factors: land, labor, and the investor. So here, if we've got the land, we've got the labor, all we need to do here is the investor that either internationally that brings money with, so that's all the third factor, and as well as the informal sector. So all I need to do is give people the land and help them to invest, and people will take out all the money that we don't know about, which is in the informal sector. And that's worldwide, very common sector of economy.
Right. Talking about the public share, how far do you think the public share is going to be calculated?
He's talking about 500 million shares offered to the Egyptians, and £100 to a normal adult, and £10 to students. And I think besides, as we mentioned earlier, besides the social benefit that having that sense of reality and the ties between the Egyptians and their project, I think it will help generate a lot of money, probably talking about 5 billion Egyptian pounds, and over the next 3 years, because we're talking about building just a year, but the money we need after that in terms of establishments and having the ports, and we're talking about 4 airports as well. We're talking about Ras, we're talking about Merida, Portside, as well as the Eastern Delta, and the development of Ras Gharib area.
Right. Dr. Mehna, from your own perspective, when do you think will we start to reap the fruit of this important project?
I don't think, in terms of the local feeling, the local citizens feeling that, I think we will feel it instantly in terms of
impact.
In terms of employment. That's feel it instantly, because the armed forces is taking care of the payments.
1 million jobs it is supposed to be.
Exactly. But that's over a period of time. So we're talking at the moment about the digging jobs. in terms of companies providing the tools and the labor. After that, we will have the people that are involved in building. Thereafter, we have the people that have pavement and establishment of buildings, etc.
So as it develops,
exactly, it will increase.
We gradually feel the fruit.
Absolutely. And we will have more people working in ports, airports, and companies. So I think not before 3 years we will have a full comprehensive operations that basically attracts people and their families to the eastern side of the Gulf of Suez.
Right. Well, the Gulf of Suez is not only attracting Arab investors, but also the Russians, because it was mentioned, actually, the area was mentioned and was introduced during the latest visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Russia. We're awaiting an industrial hub there in the area. We'll be talking about this and also recapping the fruits of President al-Sisi's visit to Russia. This report highlights the fruits of the visit. We will be back.
President Fattah al-Sisi returned to Cairo Wednesday after a 2-day visit to Russia, where he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. During his 2-day visit, the leaders discussed the latest political developments in the region, especially in Syria, Iraq, and Gaza, as well as bilateral relations between Egypt and Russia. It was announced during the visit that Russia will invest in an industrial area in Egypt's new Suez Canal project, a plan to build a parallel canal beside the vital waterway. A new free trade zone between Egypt, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus was also discussed during the visit. Sisi and Putin also agreed to continue technical military cooperation between the two countries. The two presidents also announced that there will be an increase in Russian wheat exports to Egypt. The visit opened new horizons of cooperation between the two countries. The press conference following the meeting, both leaders announced their plans for enhancing bilateral cooperation in the fields of trade, economy, investment, and energy. Sisi added that there is another plan of renewing and developing joint projects established by the former Soviet Union. Meanwhile, an agreement has been reached to increase Egypt's supply of agricultural goods to Russia by 30%, while Putin announced that his country will provide Egypt with millions of tons of wheat. The Russian leader also reportedly said that a free trade zone is being discussed. The Russian president told reporters that Russia will supply at least 5 to 5.5 million tons of wheat to Egypt this year and will increase agricultural goods imports from the North African country. Putin added that Egypt is ready to increase agricultural goods exports to Russia by 30% and is discussing the creation of a free trade zone with the Moscow-led customs union of Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. However, in the previous 2013-2014 marketing year, Russia supplied 3.6 million tons of wheat to Egypt.
President al-Sisi's visit to Russia comes timely. Dr. Mehna, many areas of cooperation with the Russian side, if we can recap the results of the visit economically.
When we talk about Russia particularly, it is one of the oldest diplomatic relationships with Egypt, starting in 1748 with the first consulate appointed here in Egypt. But taking that up to 1939 with the first embassy started, and then from there, after the Second World War and the support of Russia to the Egyptians in the nationalization of the Suez Canal, in the attack of Israel against Egypt or Egypt on port side area, they also stood there, and also rebuilding the Egyptian army from 1967 up to 73. I think there was a number of problems in terms of cold relationship during the 80s and then started again. I think the interest that has been reflected over the relationship here, it is important to notice that the support of the Russians to the Egyptians in their fight against terrorism, and now in helping Egypt basically going through its roadmap. The relationship basically confirms that the Egyptian-Russian relationship is taking a different turn that is focused on mature relationship and benefit to both. In terms of the benefits to the Egyptians, we look mainly at strategic as well as economic benefits. We're talking at this point at the international trade, talking 2.8 export to Russia versus 2.1. So it is a bit low. President Putin basically promised that will increase that up to $10 billion in terms of trade. Also, as we heard, he's going to increase the amount of wheat exported to Egypt, because Russia is the biggest exporter of wheat to Egypt. And also, the main thing that we're talking about here is the industrial zone as well as the free zone. The industrial zone here is fully funded by the Russians, and basically in terms of all the economic traditional benefits in terms of job creation, number of companies, and we're talking about a number of nuclear companies that had basically some interest or showed some interest in helping Egypt in the nuclear. So in terms of the energy as an economic sector, Russia has a great experience, particularly in the natural gas. They basically will help us in that. They will help us in building the nuclear station. And in terms of the security and the strategic position, I think that the return of Russia to the Middle East, and I think that's mainly what they are interested in, seeing the American ships in the Mediterranean. And now we've seen in the past few days they have sent 10 Russian military ships to the Mediterranean. And I think this will send a strong message to Israel that there is a partner to Egypt. So what Russia needs mainly is a strategic partner in the Middle East. And I think the return of Russia here is important. The last thing here is we need to create some sort of a balanced relationship. So it's not a replacement to the United States. It's a balanced relationship that is based on...
It's a partnership.
Exactly. It's a
essential partnership. Dr. Mehna, how about investing in the industrial area and the new Suez Canal project? This is really important since we're starting the project. So how about the Russian contribution?
The plan that was basically announced, talking about 6 roads, 6 tunnels plus 42 mega projects. The 42 mega project basically include over 20 industrial compounds that basically include textile, cars, ships, trains, and heavy industries. And as we talked earlier, I think the importance and advantage of this particular area when it comes to heavy industry, because it's the transportation cost is quite high. So here, by utilizing the ports around the Suez Canal for heavy industries, companies who specialize in heavy industries will have them basically export to Asia, Europe, and Africa. And the interest of the Russians here, particularly in the natural gas areas, in the natural area, the energy in general, as well as the heavy industries. We do talking about a number of components when it comes to the military industry, besides supplying Egypt with ready-made military amount probably about $3 billion. And I think we're talking about certain components that will be manufactured here in Egypt. So we're talking about a major change in the relationship of Russia. We are interested to have a presence in a very centered place that basically would help them to link their products worldwide.
The link in such a project as the Suez Canal project, there is definitely a sense of contribution, and it seems that we need it, a win-win situation.
Absolutely. And China as well has showed some interest, as well as Korea. And this is one of the areas that really needed some research. The contribution of major military countries into the Suez Canal.
Right. Let's even here as the tourist searcher, like now the mention also of means of boosting tourism, and this is again another important source of revenue. So
the 6 roads, the 6 roads plus the 6 tunnels will help basically increase the traffic of tourism. President Putin said that the last figures showed about 2 million Russians coming to Egypt. I think there is some areas that need to be looked at in terms of the visas and licenses, people coming into Egypt and Egyptians going. And President Putin as well in his speech promised that he will ease the procedures of Egyptians going to universities there, learning the Russian institutions. So I think we're talking about a major shift that will help Egypt. And when we talk about the strategic relationship, I don't think we will see that immediately in terms of benefits, but it's basically a long-term investment that will help us in the long run to have a variety of areas with the support of Russia, to develop a lot faster.
Right. With the support of Russia, how about resorting to the advanced technical side that the Russians can provide?
Absolutely.
How will this have an effect on the gains for the project itself?
We were talking about basically sending the technology here to Egypt in terms of manufacturing, machines, etc. And we were talking about scholarships. And I think some of the social organizations are already involved in that, in sending students after the high school going into Russia. So I think this will be a lot wider and accessible to a lot of Egyptians, and I think under the Department or the Ministry of Labor to send a lot of Egyptians that will be used in employment in a corridor to be basically trained in Russia, whether in technology or doing certain skills. And not even that, but we'll probably see on the military side a lot of training and cooperation.
If we talk about the creation of the free trade zone between Egypt and the Moscow-led customs union of Russia, we have also Belarus and Kazakhstan. Yeah. How far will it open further horizons?
I think it will be in the next 3-4 months, just in a number of areas. And I don't think it will need the corridor to start. We can start it on a number of goods and services that can basically be free of any tariffs. And when you look at the international trade in general, I think Egypt really faces a lot of problems in terms of certain exports. So he's talking about taking the potatoes that Europe refused to take, and taking a number of crops that Europe also has put a lot of limitations on the Egyptian products. So here he's going to absorb that excess in terms of the products that we can sell to Europe. They will absorb that, and in return will help us to gain the wheat as well as technology. In terms of having a free trade, will help ease the tariffs and ease the procedures, because it's just a mean to create some sort of an easy trade between the two countries. And Egypt will have an access of a large nation. It's the biggest in the world in terms of regions. They have a variety of goods and services, and they will help us particularly in the gas and the nuclear. So here we have an access to Europe, and I think it's a strong offer. It is an opportunity for Egypt to access the European market through the three countries.
Will other countries be invested in the Suez Canal project apart from Russia?
Yes, the China, India, and Korea have showed some interest. Absolutely. As we said earlier, I think it's a strategic positioning that countries try to gain, to have that access and have that presence in the Suez Canal, and particularly in Sana'a area. My expectation Sana'a area is going to be one of the biggest hubs in the world, and it should have been in 1990 the replacement of Hong Kong. But this is definitely coming, and I think President Sisi can see that vision with the corridor, access to three continents, a wide land that is definitely capable of development and full of minerals and resources that is basically will help a lot of industries to be established in that particular area.
Will you resort to the Russian advanced technical help in that regard concerning the project?
The implementation of the bidding that is done by the Egyptians, but definitely we will need a lot of technical assistance when it comes to the establishment of certain areas such as the airports and ports. So definitely we will need their help. And probably not going to be announced at the near future. As soon as they finish digging and start the features of the plan to show, they will basically announce the number of companies that will be basically part of the development. Because at this point, the company that even won the bid out of the 14, we don't know the details of how the plan will be running. So we will take it one step at a time, because that particular area is part of national security, so I don't think all the information will be released all the time.
Right. Building on what has been achieved concerning the follow-up committee that is going to continue on discussions with the Russian side, what do you think is considered to be a priority right now?
I think Mr. Abdul, the Minister of Investment, is already an international cooperation. He's already going to Russia this week, and I think the number of areas that will be the main discussion upon the issue of import and export of agricultural, we need the wheat, and they already promised to send us 5.5 million tons. We need assistance in establishing the nuclear station. We need assistance in the natural gas. And the problem with minerals and natural gas, we've depended a lot on the West, and there was a lot of exploitation of the Western companies to the Egyptian soil in terms of extraction, etc. So I think here turning into Russia into for energy side, on the agricultural side, and also easing, this is going to be the third area, is easing the export of Egyptian goods and even just crops, that the agricultural crops into Russia will absorb that excess that we had to basically keep, couldn't export it to Europe. So this is going to be the main area, is to start exporting to Europe. And here I think also Russia needs, so it's not particularly a favor, Russia needs a lot of assistance and a lot of goods for their food because of the bad relationship with the Europeans. So they already banned all food. That's right. And they already banned, even not the countries that are against them, they banned all food coming from the United States and the entire Europe. So definitely we will start looking for different partners. And it's an opportunity as well that we can use the international investors to increase the number of crops that are required in Europe.
Right. Concerning the means of cooperation in the nuclear field, what sort of schemes are we going to follow up?
Well, all we need is peaceful a project that can basically help us in energy, and we've got a number of projects that have been there. I think that project is over 90 years old in the plan. They have that experience, and they already offered to help us in there. And this will not cover just our need in Egypt, but will help us basically export energy, along with Al-Qattara portion as well as the solar energy as well as the wind energy. So we've got a number of projects that need to be launched, and I think the nuclear is definitely something that we need to look at. And the main thing here strategically is the support of Russia itself to the nuclear project will help Egypt start well and have that strong position in the nuclear field.
While resorting to Russia's important and advanced technical help, what more can Russia contribute to such a project?
I think in the field of education in general, engineering, and the medical field. And we already have the Egyptian-Russian university that was launched in Badr City a couple of years ago. So this is part of the cooperation. I think the technology city that will be established in Ismailia and the technology university, Russia will have a major contribution in that. So what we need here particularly is heavy industries, talking about ships, submarines, cars, as well as the software industry. So definitely it's difficult to say how many industries we can really use their help, but as soon as they are here, there will be a lot of opportunities that will rise. With real support in terms of investment, in terms of money, and the skills, a lot of opportunities will be opened up.
Right. You've mentioned the field of education, Doctor. In what spheres can they contribute?
They were talking about the medical engineering field, particularly helping Egyptians to get easier scholarships or fully funded scholarships to Russia. This was particularly very difficult in the past few years. Visas has been really a problem. So I think offering scholarships to Egyptians will help Egyptians gain that experience and technology here. And on the other side, they will have experts, as they had in the 60s and 70s, training our people here. They will have technical experts that train our people in our factories. So this is really what we need, is scholarships, and this is how we can transfer technology. And international companies, the multinational corporations and permitted investment, they also bring their technology as well. So it is unseen kind of transfer. Our people will learn, they will move to other companies, they will take that knowledge with them, their skills with them. So definitely it is something that we can feel in terms of scholarship or education here in the classroom, or in terms of the investment and training our own people on the side job training.
Right. The visas are going to facilitate also the area of tourism, the exchange of tourism between both countries. But besides tourism, how about vice versa, the Egyptians going to visit Moscow, and also the cultural aspects, the cultural field?
Absolutely. I think there's been always that impression that Arabs, when they visit Europe, they don't come back. So Russia was just one of the countries that had really to deal strictly with the Arabs generally. in terms of obtaining a visa, this will be basically eased off. And basically this is how much money do you have, and what is your contribution to the Russian economy. Exactly the same way we look at them when they come. In terms of national security, I think, there's few millions in Russia that are basically Jews, and these people are stopped at the Egyptian airports in terms of national security check. So not all areas will be wide open, and so here we have to, despite the fact that we're starting a new phase of relationship, we have to look at the national security in terms of spying and the roots of these people that are coming into the country.
Right. For the free trade zone, how long will it take us to achieve?
They were talking probably in the next 2 years, but I think we will not feel it fully before the 3 years, and the completion of the corridor itself, to start seeing establishments, industrial compounds, markets.
How far will it have a positive impact on the national economy?
Not before it's already established. So in the next 2-3 years, we will not see anything. In terms of the development of the corridor, you will see, as we said, in terms of digging, establishment, building, etc. But I think the free zone, not particularly in the corridor, will be freed, but we will feel it on goods and products that are exported to Russia or coming from Russia, in terms of reducing the tariffs, as we said earlier. So I will feel the relationship, the trade relationship, in terms of reducing the tariff and easing the procedures, so people will feel it. But in terms of the establishment of the free zone, not before it's already fully established.
Right. Egypt and Russia also see eye to eye on political developments, not only in the field of trade.
Russia has, and also with the Egyptian leaders before the year of the Brotherhood, they already saw what could happen in the Middle East, and how the Middle East will become fragile. And we couldn't really understand why Russia is supporting Syria, but it's now all clear why the Russians have supported Syria, and basically here the presence will provide us with a military cooperation as well as political.
Right. Well, we have with us over the phone Excellency Ambassador Saad, Egypt's former ambassador to Moscow. Thank you very much, Excellency, for joining us and talking about a recap of the fruits of the President's visit to Russia. It came timely. And how about the Russians' contribution to the industrial area in Egypt's new Suez Canal? Mr. Ambassador.
Well, good evening, and thank you for calling me. In fact, you have to look at this visit from all its aspects. But I think if you want to classify this visit in one word, you can just tell it is a very strategic visit, which is paving the way for a new era of Russian-Egyptian relationship. And I think if you look at the significance of the timing of the visit and the choice of Russia, that would tell that, well, Egypt is now adopting a new foreign policy that is based on its interest driven. We are open to all countries, and we are not open here to close door. It's widening the base of our interests in all areas. And Russia, having Russia as the first non-Arab country to visit, I think it expresses one appreciation for the support that President Putin and Russia has given to the 30th of June revolution, and reiterating the intentions and the willing of Egypt to establish this relation on strategic basis and on long-term basis. If you look at the very important question you have raised, I think all areas of negotiations were as expected, but even beyond. And one of the, I would say, the surprises that the decision to have an industrial zone in the Suez Canal hub. You call it development project. I think it's meant to be a hub. I think this is quite interesting, because Russia will be the first investor in a project that hasn't started yet. That reflects very much how Russia would like to express its full support, and it's willing to see that the Egyptian leadership is successful in leading the country to a new era of economic and social development. Second, which is very important, that Russia is they read in a wonderful way geography and history, and they know the significance, the central role of Egypt in the region. At the same time, they can have a kind of perception of the future of the Middle East, which is going through a very a turmoil. I mean, if you look around, you find that turmoil everywhere. But two major things are happening here. We are seeing a kind of descending and ascending roles of different parties, whether we are talking about countries or we are talking about non-state actors. Also, this kind of the ugly and vicious new wave of terrorism, which is not confined anymore to just military operations, suicidal operations, but it goes far beyond that, to establishing a new borders, which is reflects how dangerous the terrorism, not only to the Middle East, not only to Egypt, but it also represents a danger to Russia, knowing that Russia has suffered previously from terrorist attacks, which is very much associated with political Islam, and they know what it means. And that's one of the things, I think, one of the reasons why Russia was very supportive, that for them the fall of political Islam in Egypt was a kind of a plus and an achievement for Russia itself. So the second factor that they know that the United States has in a different ways lost a lot of its popularity among the people since the 1st of June, and they are at the same time they are preparing to lessen the strategic presence in the Middle East prior to their shift to Asia and Pacific. So Russia now is finding that the whole situation, if you are coming back strongly through Egypt, that would give them quite a support, particularly that the situation in Iran and Syria are not that comforting for the future in their relations with Russia.
Right. Excellency, it has been announced during the visit concerning this new investment. What other sort of Russian advanced technical help in achieving the specific stages of this project can we talk about?
You mean the Suez Canal?
Yes.
Well, it's in two. I think I can see that in two areas. One is if Egypt will need, for digging the new canal, Russia enjoys a kind of advantage and kind of excellence in producing the large machines, which could help very much in digging the new canal with a higher speed. If it comes to the industrial zone, I mean, people should know that Russia, at the time, it is importing Western technology. At the same time, they have started a kind of process which they call a conversion of the military technology to the civilian sector. And from there on, they have started to produce new products with a high technology. And I think they're having an industrial zone in the Suez Canal, in the area of Suez Canal, would very much promote their products, and bringing a new point of exportation from Russia to Asia, the Gulf, and to the Red Sea, and to Africa. So, plus, third is that Russia enjoys a very high technology in different areas, and R&D, if you want, research and development. So industrial zone in the Suez Canal area would be very much an addition and a value added both to Egypt as well as to Russia.
Right, Excellency Ambassador Raouf Saad, Egypt's former ambassador to Moscow, thank you so much for your valuable input and your contribution to the daily debate for tonight. Back to you, Dr. Mehna. Mr. Ambassador had mentioned the timing and the significance of the visit, the timing itself, and also how Russia is considered to be the first non-Arab visit by the President his visit to Moscow and the significance of visiting Russia in particular. So highlighting about that and recapping the fruits of the visit, because we do have like 1 minute to recap the show.
I think it's all started very well in terms of timing, the visit, basically the declaration that Russia has made was to support Egypt against terrorism and support Egypt to stand against the conspiracy of the new Middle East. And I think here the presence and the partnership that Russia intends to have with Egypt, and Egypt is quite keen to have that kind of partnership, is basically to send a strong signal to the West that we do have a strong allies that can also stand and support us. So here, in terms of the political sphere, I think with the ties that Russia have with Iran, I do expect that a solution will be put to the Gulf area, a solution will be put to Syria, and be with us. So we're quite happy with the partnership.
Hopefully, we are looking into further horizons of cooperation.